14 people are dead after a helicopter crashed near a nursery school in a suburb of Kiev. Ukraine's interior minister is among the victims, along with at least one child. Officials say another 25 people were wounded. Those on board were believed to be traveling to Kharkiv in the eastern part of the country. While the cause of the crash is still being investigated, it's believed this was an accident. Canada's defense minister offered her condolences to the victims as she happened to be in the capital today to make an announcement about Canada contributing more military aid.
We are sending 200 armored vehicles to Ukraine from Russia.
Defense Minister Anita Anand said Canada is also looking at additional ways to support Ukraine. The country is requesting tanks from its allies ahead of a meeting of defense officials in Germany this Friday. Larisa Galadza is Canada's ambassador to Ukraine. She joins us from Kyiv. Ambassador, before we speak with you about what's happening on the ground, I'd like to ask you about some breaking news here in Canada. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly is summoning the Russian ambassador in Ottawa. It's not the first time this has happened, but from your perspective, is it time to just stop with the warnings and kick Russian diplomats out of Canada?
That's a really big decision. I think that if the Russian diplomats weren't there right now, she wouldn't be able to summon them and face-to-face express just how disgusted Canada is with Russia's actions here. And I think it probably has something to do with the rocket attack on the apartment building in Dnipro on the weekend.
So at this point, you see there's still value in having those diplomats here so you can keep that line of communication open and express those messages in person. Is that your position?
That's my personal view, yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you today about Canada's announcement about the contribution of 200 armored personnel carriers to Ukraine. What we know right now, well, we know that is a very welcome addition to what is going on the ground. What Ukraine is really after at this point in the war is tanks. If we start to see more NATO allies send tanks, particularly if Germany gives the green light, will Canada also start sending tanks?
So Ukraine doesn't need just one of anything. They've got a list of priorities. And right now what they're trying to do is build up the capacity that they need to go on a strong, sort of iron-fisted counteroffensive. And that includes a range of capabilities. And tanks is certainly high up there on the list. As you may know, there's this, what we provide to Ukraine is provide inside a network of international partners that are all trying to do their best to get Ukraine what it needs. And those discussions are really, really important. And they happen in person. And the next meeting of that is on Friday. And I can tell you that tanks are going to be discussed. Minister Anand will be there. And she's going to get all the information that she needs to take the conversations that she has with Minister Reznikov and with Ottawa further.
She did have those high-level meetings today and those important conversations. I'm curious as to whether Canada will be there to advocate for Ukraine if Germany is sort of the country that is hesitant, unsure if they want to give the green light. Is Canada prepared to lobby on behalf of Ukraine to sort of push Germany to go in this direction?
Canada is going to be there with its allies, and it's important that we show unity with our allies, but also put Ukraine at the center of our thinking and everything Ukraine is fighting for at the center of our thinking, and together get to where we need to be. So if that's what you call lobbying to get them the equipment that they need, then yes.
And so just so that I'm very, very clear on that, you want Ukraine at the center of the conversation, which, of course, I think that is everyone's on board with that. But is it your understanding that Canada's position is to push Germany in the direction of yes to giving a green light to sending tanks into Ukraine?
Minister Anand was very clear today that her position is she's going from these one-on-one conversations with Minister Reznikov today, which were long and fruitful and frank and really, really warm, I must say, into a much broader conversation with that constellation of about 40 countries, I believe, that are supporting Ukraine. And those are important building blocks to ultimate decisions that we make bilaterally and as a community.
Any indication from any of the conversations you've had that Germany is prepared to move in this direction? Is there any signals that you're seeing through your diplomatic channels?
I haven't seen those, but then that's not sort of the focus of my work here in Kyiv right now, no.
Okay. The New York Times is reporting that the Biden administration is considering sending Ukraine the kind of military equipment it might need to make efforts in Crimea. The reporting is citing U.S. officials speaking on a condition of anonymity. But I'm curious, have there been any conversations with Canada about this type of effort to target Crimea?
Again, these are conversations that are happening amongst capitals, between ministers at forums like Ramstein in Germany that will happen again on Friday, and this isn't something that we as ambassadors would be doing here in a group. So I'm not privy to those conversations that the United States and anonymous sources in the United States might be having with Ukrainians.
Fair enough, fair enough. I just thought I'd put that to you just in case you'd heard anything going on about the conversation around Crimea, because there are considerations of that. Do you think that if that is something that comes up, that Russia would see that as a significant provocation?
We've always said that Crimea is Ukraine. And I don't think it's any provocation to defend your sovereign territory. We shouldn't see that as a provocation.
In late summer and fall, momentum in this fight really seemed to be building on Ukraine's side. But in recent weeks, we have seen a number of setbacks. And if we take a look at the past 7 days alone, there's been the attack in Dnipro and what appears to be, and then today, this very tragic, what appears to be an accident that killed, the helicopter crash that killed the interior minister. I'm wondering, you're on the ground there, how is this affecting the morale of the people of Ukraine?
I have to say today was a very heavy day. Firstly, because people are still, the whole country is still heartbroken about what's going on in what happened in Dnipro on Saturday and the rocket attack on a civilian apartment building as they pulled people out of the rubbles, and the stories continue to come out. It's very hard. And then this morning, this tragic accident of a helicopter coming down into a kindergarten schoolyard with a good number of people killed and a lot of children in hospital. And by the way, the 3 senior officials killed in that helicopter, each of them had a really important tie to Canada. So we in our embassy and in our delegation really felt that today. So the mood is heavy, but at the same time, you have high-level visits continuing. You have really Ukraine's partners continuing to show commitment to the cause, and the momentum shifting, I feel, on the provision of the military equipment that Ukraine needs to make some really good headway.
We're running out of time, but I'm really curious. Can you talk to us a bit about the Canadian connections to those officials that were killed today?
Sure. Minister Monastyrsky has for a long time been involved in police reform and security sector reform and on projects that Canada funded here in Ukraine. Yevgeny Yenin, he was previously Deputy Foreign Minister. He was our point person when the Ukraine International Airlines flight was shot down over Tehran that had 173 people going to Canada on it. Yevgeny, for a couple of years, was our point person. We have Iranian Canadians in Canada who know Yevgeny, who met with him, who talked with him. He was our main interlocutor and such an important partner in seeking that justice and truth and accountability from Iran. And then the state secretary who died, he was a participant on the Canada-Ukraine parliamentary program. That means he spent 3 months working on Parliament Hill in a member of Parliament's office, and like everyone who did that program, found their way in life and their inspiration for what they were going to do with their life working in Canada. So these are tragedies, as are the deaths of the children and the parents and the other people who are on board. But those 3 ties to Canada were significant.
I really hate to end our conversation on such a sad, tragic note, but we're going to end it there. Larisa Galadza, Canada's ambassador to Ukraine, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thanks, Katie.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is welcoming the latest Canadian donation of armored vehicles. And while it is significant for a country like Canada, Ukraine is still pushing its allies for more. Yulia Kovaliv is Ukraine's ambassador to Canada. She is in Ottawa. Thank you very much for speaking with us today, Ambassador. I want to start with your reaction to the announcement of these additional 200 armored vehicles from Canada to Ukraine.
Thank you for having me today. And it's really a very important announcement as today Minister Anand is visiting Kyiv and meeting Ukrainian Minister of Defense Oleksiy Reznikov. Although they are in very close and permanent contact, her visit today is very important also as we feel a lot of Canadian support to Ukraine as we are fighting for our sovereignty, as we are protecting our people. And this announcement of the armored vehicles is very important because these are the vehicles that are aimed to protect Ukrainian soldiers. Among those will be the soldiers who are now being trained in UK with Canadian program Unifier. And these 200 Canadian-produced armored vehicles, Rochelle, are the ones that will be used to bring the soldiers safely to the battlefield and also to take those wounded from the battlefield and be able to safely take them back. So this is the support that will help us to save the life of many of those Ukrainians who are now protecting our sovereign borders and protecting the democracy and the human rights and all of these values we all share.
The next big thing the world is watching, it's decisions about tanks. And we're going to get to the meeting in Germany on Friday in just a moment. But today, Defense Minister Anita Anand was pressed about whether Canada is going to send tanks to Kiev, as has been requested. I know that there are suggestions that more conversations need to happen, but do you anticipate that Canada is going to get to that point where it will send tanks to Ukraine?
We in Ukraine have been for many months discussing the possibility and the need to supply Ukraine with the tanks. And the key partner who make a decision and who should make this decision, and we are waiting for this decision, is Germany, because Germany is the country that produce and have a big stock of the Leopard tanks. We heard a lot within the last months that the statements from the Germany that they will be ready to provide us these tanks if some of the other NATO member countries will be doing so first. And last week, United Kingdom and Prime Minister of UK announced that UK will be providing Ukraine with the NATO standard tanks. So now the door is open to Germany for making this decision. This will be one of the topics this week in discussion among our partners in this coordination format in Ramstein. So the key thing would be the Germany to make a decision, because without this decision, those countries who have these tanks will be not just physically possible to supply it. So because there will need to be German approval for that. So this is now a big discussion with Germany. We are asking Germany for a lot of months about this decision. And as we could expect that Russia can one more time start the offensive operation in coming weeks. And this will be very crucial to help us to protect the borders and also to liberate our territories. And liberating our territories, that makes us closer to the end of this war. And as we could end this war, I think that will be important to have the Ukraine's victory in this war. And to stop all the suffering of people. What we see just last few days in Dnipro, 45 people died because of Russian missile hit the civilian residential building, including the 6 small children who lost their lives. So that need to be stopped. And since Russia is still doing this aggression and just torturing people on the occupied territories, our ability in counteroffensive operations and our ability to liberate the territories is crucially important. And this is where we need the NATO standard tanks, and we need this decision to be made by the German government to provide us the tanks.
Now, I want to ask you about that attack in Dnipro in just a moment, but I want to go back to this meeting just so our viewers know there is a major meeting of defense ministers in Germany on Friday, and the big question is whether Germany is going to greenlight the transfer of those German-made tanks, so that and other NATO countries are going to do the same. The UK seems to have taken the first step to get there, and I know that this is going to be the major conversation. I'm wondering, do you have any indication from anything that you know that Germany is going to say yes, okay, and give this the green light?
The only thing we know now that the argument that Germany was putting on the table that there should be any other country among the NATO members that should need to do a first step in supplying Ukraine with NATO standard tanks in order then to Germany follow up. This argument is already out of the table because of and thanks to the decision of UK and Prime Minister Sunak. So now the door is open, and the discussion will be among those topics that will be deeply discussed among all of the partners in Ramstein this week.
When you think about what's gone on in Ukraine over the past 7 days, you already mentioned it, the attack on the apartment building in Dnipro, and then just today, the crash of that helicopter. We don't have a lot of information about what happened there, but the early indications are that there's no foul play suspected in that helicopter crash that also killed children and also killed one of your colleagues, the Interior Minister. I'm wondering if you can describe how you're feeling in this moment, knowing what's gone on, in the past. I know that this has been a months-long, nearly a year of trauma and death, but just this past week, I'm just wondering how you're feeling.
It's a very hard feeling, especially when you are losing your friends and while losing the people with whom, with the Minister of Interior Defense, we just talked on Friday. And he was sharing the story about the Canadian bomb suits that have been provided as the part of the demining efforts to help Ukraine in the demining. And these bombing suits saved the life of two of the people from his team who were working with the demining on all of these liberated areas. And we had a lot of plans to work together on the demining side, on the reform of the patrol police, where we are grateful to Canadian government for the constant support of these efforts. He was leading a lot of first respond efforts, because the team he was leading was the people who were, after the military people have been liberated the territories, they were the first responders who were there helping people on the liberated areas, but also seeing all this horror, what Russia has done with the people, like we saw in Izum, like we saw in Bucha. And he was with us when Prime Minister Trudeau was in May in Irpin, and Minister was with us during this trip. And it's very hard to lose such a people, such a patriotic and decent Ukrainian leaders. And the horror of this tragedy today, that the helicopter crash was also, it crashed on the kindergarten. And unfortunately, one child and his mother died with this attack. And just on Saturday, the attack of Russian missiles just hitting the residential building took life of 45 people, and including the 6 children, the small children. And some of the other children just now are orphans. This is the huge tragedy, and this is also the call for the what Ukrainian government, what we have been asking our partners to help us with the air defense systems. And we are very grateful for Canadian government for making the decision to provide Ukraine with the US-produced NASAM system that could create and help us to strengthen air defense and avoid such huge tragedies that we saw in Dnipro.
We're running out of time here, but I just want to confirm. You're saying that Denis Monostrysky, the Interior Minister who was tragically killed in that crash today, he was a part of the visit when Justin Trudeau was in Irpin, and you just been speaking with him on Friday about some of the Canadian, some of the aid that Canada has given to this effort. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
Well, given the audience you have right here, what do you want the world to know about the minister and his legacy and his impact on the world?
We have a lot of people now in Ukrainian government who are dedicating, who are brave, who are courage, and who are working 24/7. And Minister Monastersky was among them. And it's very hard for us to get this news today, as he and his colleagues and his deputy minister, who was part of the Ukrainian Foreign Service for many years, unfortunately died in this horrific tragedy.
All right. I hate to end their conversation on that very, very sad note, but I want to thank you for your time today and speaking with us.
Thank you.